Welcome back to this brand new house church training. I hope you had a good break. As we come back, we're going to start with our final exam question again. But this time, instead of writing it down, I hope that you are kind of getting it in your mind. Turn to somebody next to you and answer the question. Why does Simple Church exist? So go ahead. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. Okay, that was a short 30 seconds. Why does Simple Church exist? It exists to reach secular and unchurched people with the everlasting gospel of Jesus Christ. We have been learning how to start a simple church in our home. And we have talked about what does a simple church gathering look like, the template. In our last session, we covered the 9 essential tools for missional house churches. These are tools we've discovered over the years that keep a house church missionary focused. Otherwise, I guarantee it will become a holy huddle of like-minded people getting together and hanging out until Jesus comes. That's not what we're here for. It's about reaching people who don't know Jesus, people who are far from God. That's what this is about. Well, in this session, we're going to answer and explore the question, help! What do we do with the children? To set the stage, I want to contrast 2 videos. The first video is actually the intro clip for a documentary called Divided. If you go to our webpage, at the very top, there's a tab called Resources. Scroll down in the Resources tab to Documentaries, and you will be able to watch this entire documentary. It is fascinating. Then I'm going to contrast that with a second video clip, which is going to give us an insight into what our children really are hoping for. So with that, let's watch the documentary. Let's watch the video clip.
We saw the statistics done by researcher George Barner indicating back in 2002 that around 2/3 of young people are going to leave the church. I mean, that's a shocking statistic.
A recent New York Times article asks, why are so many people in their 20s taking so long to grow up?
Kids are flocking out of the church.
America is on the same track as the European Union.
Whether you want to go with the alarming high of 88% or the biased low of 40%, it's a crisis and everybody knows it.
Why are young adults leaving the church? Your teens becoming fake Christians.
We had some wrong thinking about youth work for a long time, a number of years, that fun and games and flashiness somehow brought transformation, and we're realizing it really doesn't.
Are we losing teens even before graduation?
The issue of young adults dropping out of church has been a hot topic for several years, calling into question the long-term effectiveness of youth ministry.
I ask myself, if 80% of these kids are walking away from the faith, and have in the 80s and the 90s, how many of my children do I want to see walk away and go to hell? Which 4 of my 5 children do I want to lose?
We're losing about 40% of them by the end of middle school and another 45% by the end of high school. In other words, we're losing them way before college.
88% of the children raised in evangelical homes leave church at the age of 18, never to return.
The amazing part of that clip is where they interview youth specialists who are now saying, we've made some mistakes, we got it wrong. We have used consumerism, a consumerism model, to try to attract the young adults and keep them in church. You know, what I'm beginning to notice is even though it's from good-hearted intentions, the process of segregating out our children according to their learning styles, different ages learn differently. No, nothing wrong with that. That comes from a good-hearted intention to teach our children. But what we have also taught them is to be consumers of church. We use a program to attract them. We use a program to entice them. And as they grow up and become teenagers, the questions become, do I like my youth group? Do I like my youth teacher? Do I like my young adult teacher? And that gets carried right on into adulthood, which is where we see People saying, do I like the church? Do I like the preacher? Do I? That is the hallmark. That is the watchword of consumerism. Now I want to contrast this video clip. It's going to reveal the heart, what our children are really hoping for from their parents.
If you could have dinner with anyone, living or dead, who would you choose?
Kylie Minogue.
Oh. Marilyn Monroe. Oh God, I wouldn't have a clue.
I know, straight up. Yeah. Paul Hogan.
Kim Kardashian.
No.
I'd like to have dinner with Justin Bieber.
What? He's not coming to my house.
No,
I'd have Bob Hawke.
Dave Hughes.
Barry Humphries.
Jimi Hendrix.
People who have made a difference in the world, maybe Nelson Mandela at the dinner table.
I don't know what he's going to say, I'm scared.
If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would you choose?
Probably our whole family, like our whole extended family.
Mum and Dad. Mum and Dad. Does it have to be a celebrity? Could it be family?
We love it. We talk about how school is. We ask Mum and Dad how their day was.
Family.
Yeah, Mum and Dad.
Family. Who would you like to have dinner with? They just want to be with us while they're eating food, which is pretty cool.
They see us above everything. I'm gonna get...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of a message in it for me.
Yeah.
What are we having for dinner?
Does it have to be a celebrity? Can it be family? Did you hear the heart? Our children are not wanting programs. They're not wanting polished performances. They're not wanting entertainment. They're wanting family. Working with children is your primary mission field. To say, oh, just sit and buck up and listen to the adults, you're missing it. It's about engaging our children. It's about discipling them. That takes energy. That takes planning. That takes focus. That takes fun. But here's the key part, and I don't want you to miss this. The way we reach our children in today's world is by bringing them along with you as you focus beyond them. This is a very different approach than outsourcing your children for others to disciple. So the process of bringing them along with you as a team player, making it fun, interactive, exciting, adventuresome, participatory, engaging, that's what our children are longing for. It's about total family involvement. Now I'm going to show you a number of examples that we have used and taken pictures of how we have created this. Here's one on the screen right now. Guess what this was getting ready for? Clean feet, clean hearts. We were getting ready for communion. In Simple Church, because communion, the sacraments, the Lord's Supper, is a believer's event, we don't do it in Simple Church on Sabbath because anyone can be there. But we let people know that it's going to happen on a specific date on Friday nights. So they are welcome to come, but they're coming on Friday night by their own initiative, not because we're doing it and they just happen to be there and they even though they may be uncomfortable. So we were getting ready for communion, and this craft involved the children tracing their own feet, cutting them out, putting their names on them, and adding them to this poster, Clean Feet, Clean Hearts. Now, in most fellowship environments, most conventional churches, foot washing is not part of the communion service. But when you read the biblical story, it was part of it. And it teaches a whole concept of if you have been cleaned, you don't need a whole bath. I just need to clean your feet. Taking that concept and teaching it to children is what the goal was with this craft. Notice, these crafts are not time fillers. They're not, oh, what are we going to do with the kids today? Quick, grab some coloring crayons. No, takes intentional planning. To disciple your own children takes a huge amount of work. Believe me, it's easier to outsource them to somebody else and try to have somebody else create the activities to raise your children and disciple them. But as a parent, that is our privilege. This poster shows up in the background. Here is our Friday night communion service, the sacraments. So in preparing for this, we talked with a couple families ahead of time and said during the meal, remember in the New Testament, communion was part of a meal. It wasn't just a little program that happened during church. So we talked to a couple families ahead of time and asked one family to read the story about the bread and then have prayer for the bread. Another family to read the story about the juice, the grape juice, and have prayer for the grape juice. It's potluck where everyone brings bread and spreads or fruit. There may have been a soup, I don't remember. But as you zero in, here's the communion bread. The children actually made this. Again, this is all about discipleship. This wasn't something that was purchased down at some store. There you can find leavened bread recipes online, and so the children were part of making this special bread. It's a time to talk, it's interactive, it's preparing for it, it's telling the stories of what means and what the symbols mean. This is discipleship. But it takes your engagement in it. The juice was not just little tiny cups of juice. They were big cups of juice. And when communion was over, we gathered up all the food, the leftover leavened bread, the leftover grape juice, and we gave it to people who were running short on food. Now, I realize in some traditions, and they are that, traditions, the bread and the juice is dumped out, it's burned, something happens with it. But what we've discovered in Simple Church, it's not about traditions, it's about what does the Bible say. And so it has challenged us to reevaluate all of our church traditions in light of what are the clear, thus saith the Lord's, and then what is left open for us to say, how do we want to express this? I'm going to look now and give a bunch of pictures from the book of Genesis. Keep in mind, most of this comes out of the trash cans of America. In other words, we don't go spend a lot of money on this. It's simple, but it takes your creative planning. It is a lot easier just to let the kids sit in the circle with the adults, but you lose huge opportunities to engage them. And you might say, oh, but they're already 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, but those teenagers, those young teenagers into the mid-teenagers, the key part that they play is they are now the ones helping plan the activities for the younger ones. This is discipleship through and through and through. No shortcuts, no easy outs, and it's a lot of work. But at the end of the day, where do you want your children? Do you want them part of that 75, 80% who are leaving the church and leaving God? It takes engagement. Here is the craft for Adam and Eve blaming each other. So this is what they call a mobile, where some old wire, I don't know if it was a coat hanger wire with some paper. They traced their hands, then they cut out their hand on what they traced on the paper. Then they added Adam blamed Eve, and they decorated them, and they hung them. They did multiple tracings and decoratings of their hands. And then each child created a mobile that they took home. This one is on building a family tree, Genesis 4. So you can see they went out, they had some cardboard, went out and collected leaves and bark. It looks like some pretty beads, plastic beads were added, glue, and they made a family tree. Here we have the declining ages beginning with Adam till after the flood. And to help the children understand this concept of what it means to be 900 years old, they approached it in 3 different ways. One is the graph. You can see the dip in the middle for, who is it? Enoch, 300 years. Then it goes, and then it declines sharply after the flood. And the very last one is Miss Ann, an 80-year-old that is in our local Simple Church. Then they took popsicle sticks. They colored them with markers, stained them, and each popsicle stick looks like it's about 200 years, and they made a different kind of graph. But then the one that the kids loved the most was counting. And here was Cheerios. You could use beans. So they told me that in this glass jar labeled Adam, there are 900 some Cheerios in there, which seems to be a little impossible to me. Seems like we need a bigger. Then Enoch, we're at 300, and then Miss Ann has a little tiny baby jar at 80. So you can see this is creativity, this is planning ahead, but it's intentional discipleship. If you don't disciple your children, somebody else will. Here's building the ark. Now this one we went down to a store that sells refrigerators and asked if they had a big box. Then we went to a secondhand store and for 50 cents bought a can of brown used paint. And we hope it would be a usable paint. So they made this ark. This wasn't inside in the circle. This is obviously outside. They made this ark. They painted it. This took several weeks to complete this project. But the kids still talk about building the ark. Experiencing the flood. This was a bit of a chemistry experiment. I did not know that if you add vinegar and baking soda, it creates bubbles in a chemical reaction. So somebody went online, learned how to make paper boats. So all the children spent time making boats. They floated them in the water, and then they brought on the storm. Vinegar and baking soda. Or here's after the flood, sending out the dove. Again, somebody went online, how do you make a dove? So the children carefully cut out, they printed out the forms, the outlines, read the directions, cut it out, added the eyes, the beak, folded it all, put it together, and each children had a dove. Here we go, making the rainbow after the flood. This was fascinating to me. Food coloring. And someone went out and had to buy coffee filters because you can take food coloring and stain coffee filters, thus making the rainbow. They added some cotton and some glue. They made their rainbows. This one was a real hit for the young boys, a time of war. I don't remember the full story in Genesis, but there's war going on. So how do you teach this to young ones? Well, they had paper and coins, and they traced their faces, painted their faces, cut out their faces, stuck them onto colored clothespins, set them up in a sandbox for war. And then here is the covenant. Genesis chapter 15. So the children took Bible promises, a covenant God has made with us, some of their favorite Bible promises. They wrote them out, they rolled them up, burned the edges, and I think later they kind of somehow spread these out and so they could take them home and mount them. This was a very creative one. My daughter loves to propagate Christmas cacti. So she had a lot of these in her room. And so this was about planting, Genesis 21. So we purchased some clay pots and some markers. And so the children colored all of their vases, their pots, and then they had a Christmas cacti. And still today, many years later, several years later, the children still talk about, and when we go to their homes, we see these Christmas cacti that continue to grow. Now, I hesitate to actually show all these examples because you think, oh, how can we do that? It takes planning. It takes some creativity. But reaching your children, not by focusing on them, but by engaging them, turns Sabbath from a dry, boring day into the highlight of their week. So please, don't set your children on the couch for the adult study. Plan something for them. Engage them. Win their hearts so that their memories of Sabbath are a day full of fun and activities, and you will win their hearts to Jesus Christ. Well, that concludes our section on how to start a simple church in your home. What does the gathering look like? We went over the template. Use it for 9 months. It will save you mistakes, and it will build a DNA into your simple church that will protect you from mistakes you don't even know that you will make. The 9 essentials for missional house churches. This will keep you missionary focused instead of holy huddle focused. And help. What do we do with the children? They are your primary mission field. But the way you reach them is not by focusing on them. The way you reach them is create an environment that becomes a service-oriented environment of serving others. And we talked about some of that in the Matthew Party concept. That wraps up our session on starting a simple church in your home. In our next session, you will learn how to find secular and unchurched people, what we call truth seekers. Well, again, it's an honor to have you on this journey in this brand new house church training. It will change your life. It will change the life of your family and your friends and neighbors, but for eternity. It's not simplistic church. It's not easy church. It's simple church. And that is, it's simple forms. It's primitive godliness. So I look forward to seeing you in the next session. May God richly bless you.